ကျွန်တော်အခုတွေးဆုံမေးမြန်းသွားမှာတော့ Mr. Igor ဖြစ်ပါတယ် Mr. Igor က comparative political science လို့ခေါ်တဲ့ဒီနိုင်ငံရေးသိပ္ပံကိုတက်ကြွဒီမိုကရေစီရေးတက်ကြွလှုပ်ရှားသူတွေအတွက်သင်ကြားပေးနေတဲ့ senior ဆရာတူဖြစ်ပါတယ်သူက Prague Civil Society Center မှာအကြံပေးတရားအနေနဲ့လုပ်နေပါတယ်မြန်မာဒီမိုကရေစီရေးအတွက်ပါဝင်ပတ်သက်နေတာထောက်ကကူညီထောက်ပံ့မှုတွေဒီလိုမျိုးလုပ်ပေးနေတာနှစ်ပေါင်း20ရှိသွားပါပြီမြန်မာအရေးနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့ပတ်သက်နေတာနှစ်ပေါင်း20ရှိသွားပါပြီအခုMr. Igor ကိုကျွန်တော်2022ကိုသူအနေနဲ့ဘယ်လိုမြင်လဲ2023เนาะကိုဘယ်လိုလှမ်းမြော်ကြည့်ပြီးတော့မြန်မာမြင်နေဆိုတဲ့ဟာတွေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးတော့မေးမြန်းသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ် Thank you, Mr. Igor. Now, the coup has been almost 2 years, and when you look back in 2022, what did you see, and how did you analyze on 2022? Is that a kind of devastated year, or how do you see that?
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's really both pleasure and honor to participate in a Mizzima program. When we look back, in a certain way, everybody in the international community expected that sooner or later, military junta will suppress the popular people's uprising against the junta. The huge, impressive achievement of the people of the Myanmar is that junta has not been able to suppress the popular uprising and the resistances. When we looked, there has been in recent history a lot of huge uprisings of the people against the dictatorships in their country. We can look on Hong Kong, we can look into the Belarus. And when you see there, basically the regimes, in a similar way like in Myanmar, has used extreme brutal violence. And after 3-4 months, the regimes, by using brutal violence, has suppressed resistance. In Myanmar, that didn't happen. In Myanmar, people have shown extraordinary resilience, extraordinary determination, and we are now in situation in which junta is not able to defeat the people, people are not able to defeat the junta. So we are in a 2002 put us in a situation which I call the negative equilibrium. We cannot defeat, or people cannot defeat junta, junta cannot defeat people, but it's a very destructive. Destructive because junta is using systematic destruction of everything in order to prevail. And now what is important, it's important where the tipping point will come. If we are in a negative equilibrium, it can go one direction and it can go another direction. And the next year will be important to see in which direction it will go. It's very destructive, but at the same time it's really impressive in a way how people of Myanmar are defending themselves.
I like the word you use, that negative equilibrium. And it is devastating, and also a lot of war crimes that we have found, and burning houses, killing, torturing, everything. So they do everything to suppress the people uprising. And on the other hand, they are planning to go for the election in 2023. That was they have been. It is like exist strategy for Myanmar line and the GAN. So, and also, what are the tactics that they have been using and to counter the Supreme Revolution?
I think that in this moment, junta has a very clear strategy, which has a couple of elements. One side of that strategy is not to fight the military opponents, but to fight civilian population. This is traditionally, has always been the military tactic of the junta with the four-cut policies, but now this strategy is even more clarified in the junta's minds because of the Russian assistance. Because this is a typical Russian military strategy. Russia does not fight the armed opponent. Russia fights civilian population. And when somebody looks how Russia was conducting the war in Chechnya, how Russia was helping Assad survive, how Russia is today fighting in Ukraine, it was always systematic, mass-scale, brutal hitting of the civilian population. And this is what now junta is doing. By doing that, junta is intentionally creating a huge humanitarian disaster. So this is not a secondary consequence of the war. This is the primary goal of the junta military strategy, to create a huge humanitarian burden. On one side, crisis, real emergency situation. On the other side, burden to every single stakeholder in Myanmar who is challenging junta. So this is one side. On the other side of that strategy are extremely problematic figures like Sasakawa, but also other the donor and international players who are approaching ethnic stakeholders with the carrot of the humanitarian aid and saying to them, hey, if you do even temporarily ceasefire with the junta, you will be able to get the humanitarian aid. So on one side we see this heavy international stick hitting the people on the Myanmar, and on the other side we see basically very dirty misuse of the humanitarian aid for the political purposes in order to break the alliance of the forces against the junta. And if you are a stakeholder who is opposing junta because you don't want junta, you don't like junta, but at the same time you have 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, 500,000 desperate civilian population, then you are seriously thinking what sort of the choice I should make. So on one side we have now a very problematic convergence of the Russian military strategy, which is targeting the civilian population, and a very, very dirty game with the humanitarian aid, which basically can lead the current situation into the something what I call domino effect. Let's say one stakeholder accept the temporary ceasefire, other stakeholders are looking and saying maybe we should do the same. If the second accept it, we can get a domino in which the final purpose is to cut the Kachin from the Sagaing, Arakan from the Sagaing, and achieve as many temporary ceasefires so that junta can use all its military power to brutally crash the Sagaing and Magway. So this is their strategy, and in that strategy, the elections are just a smoke bomb. They have thrown elections. They are preparing themselves systematically for elections, and they might use it, but they might not use it. They're having it in their cards, and they are deciding when they will use that card. But in this moment, because they have thrown this smoke bomb in front of the stage, it looks to me like a false attack. When you want to, defeat your opponent, then you create this false attack. The opponent move all its forces there, and then you come from the back. So elections are now something like a false attack. So a lot of our attention of the civil society, of the activists, is moving in direction to elections. But at the same time, we are becoming weak from the back of our alliance building. And I think, let's say, we need to prepare ourselves for elections, but at the same time, we need to see where the main threat now is coming. And the main threat is coming in a breaking and trying to split the alliance which was standing against behind the Spring Revolution.
So junta basic tactic is still the divide and conquer?
Still.
Okay. Then, and whenever that divide and conquer happen, we have some noises coming out, some sort of a disunity could happen, and then when we look at the national unity government, how do you see that? There are some concern about the disunity in the NUG and the disunity among the ethnic alliances. What do you think?
Probably the most important thing is I think we need the informal dialogue between the key stakeholders who have a power. Myanmar revolution was run by the many stakeholders, and that is giving a strength to the Spring Revolution, because so many social forces are giving their contribution to the struggle. But at the end of the day, let's say, the war, because we are in the middle of the war is decided by how much military power one side has and another side has. And when we look from that perspective, let's say in Myanmar there are a couple of key, let's say, stakeholders from that point of view. It's a NUG and its capacity to, let's say, have the PDF forces. It's a Kachin, Karen, Karenni, Chin, and Arakan. Because they are the backbone of the current resistance to the junta military war against the people of the country. And I think these stakeholders need to have a lot of informal dialogue in order to recreate a clear common understanding. And we need to be frank and clear that what is the underlying problem of this alliance. Underlying problem is not primarily the grievances of the ethnic stakeholders vis-a-vis NLD and so on. NLD has made a lot of mistakes before, let's say, but the underlying grievances, who has done what in the past, is a part of the problem. But much bigger problem is that ethnic stakeholders for already 70 years have a very clear political goal. We want self-determination.
Yeah.
The Spring Revolution is fighting for something else. Spring Revolution is not fighting for self-determination. Spring Revolution is fighting for the military outside of the politics, military outside of the economy, and bring back democracy. In meantime, Spring Revolution has accepted the federal principle, but has not made a clear political pledge, a clear political promise, not only federal, but self-determination. And because we have these two basically different political goals, we need to make a compromise between them.
Yeah.
We need the political courage of the players on all sides to say, we come together, let's say, and then you will get what you want already 70 years, we will get what we want to remove military from the politics and from the economy, and then let's talk about how we compromise these two different principles. And it seems to me that we are now, unfortunately, in a situation when we lack a little bit the leadership, and we lack a little bit critically important political courage to make a hard decision. And I hope somebody will do it in order to reunite politically the forces, because if we are reunited politically, then we will be much stronger on a military field, but we will be also then much stronger vis-a-vis international community, because then we can go together as a NUG, as a Kachin, as a Karen, as a Chin, as a Karenni and a Arakan, and say, we are together. We are together, this is what we want, and you as an international place must stand with us, because we are representing people. But when we go there separately, everybody bilaterally on our own, let's say, then we look as a disunited force, which why somebody should try to understand the mess of the Myanmar in which 10 different players are asking 10 different things.
Yeah, thank you. And very recently, the United States had passed, the Senate had passed the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. Burma Act is a part of NDAA. And it is to support and it is to help the Burmese people in terms of revolutions, and the organization like NUG, CRPH, and UCCs were mentioned in that. And how can we expect this aid would be helpful to the Burmese revolution? What do you think?
So it's good. It's good. It's giving certain additional strengths. If we have been talking before about this tipping balance, let's say this is a little bit giving the strength on our side. But there are two important things that we should not overlook. One is nothing what is happening abroad, nothing what is happening internationally will decide how the conflict and struggle in Myanmar will finish. That will be decided by the domestic forces. That will be decided. So what we talked before, this political unity is in a certain way much more important than anything what is in a Burma Act. But on the other side, Burma Act is having few important positive things. Let's say that it has explicitly mentioned NUG, the NUCC, the committee representative, the parliament. So the key institutions have been mentioned there as a legitimate bodies of the Myanmar. That's important, and it was explicitly mentioned that junta is not the partner of the United States, and is also cannot be in any way involved in any sort of the aid coming with the US money. It was other aspects of the assistance have been mentioned there. So all these things are adding certain additional strength to our side. It is important not to forget this is a law. This is not executive decision. This is a law which needs to be transformed now in a executive implementing policy. So we still need to continue to do a lot of advocacy with the US government, because now the war is giving us good winds, but in order to use this wind, we need to continue, let's say, very, very systematic and good advocacy.
Okay, and also we do need a political unity.
We need political unity. That's the most critical thing.
So to get that political unity, we need to talk each other, but behind the stage.
We need to talk, and we need to basically understand what are the profound demands of the key stakeholders, and we need to make a credible pledge one to another that what you want is a legitimate demand and you will have it. And once when we kind of have a new future Myanmar, there will be the federalism, there will be self-determination, there will be opportunity for the ethnic stakeholders to raise their children in their own language, to have their own schools, to govern their own, let's say, territories. That at the same time there will be a very clear pledge that the individual human rights will be respected everywhere in the country. We also, I believe, need to make a social, economic justice pledge to the people of the Myanmar. People of the Myanmar are exploited for decades by the predatory junta for using all wealth of the country to buy the jets for huge amount of the money, which are then bombing people. They are taking all wealth of the money for luxury of their families, their spoiled children. So we need to make a pledge to the people that in the future the revenues from the oil, from the gas, from the natural resources will go into the education, it will go in the healthcare, it will go into rebuilding the burned villages, it will go to recover the life of the political prisoners and so on. We need to do also this social economic promise to the people of the country that future gives something to them.
So that's quite a lot to do.
Yeah. I think junta will continue to destroy in order to defeat. So their strategy of victory is what Assad has done in Syria. Win through total destruction. We need to create enough strong political force which will then be transformed into the strong enough military force which will in a certain way bleed the military into the total weakness, which will then create the breakup of the junta, And we need this political unity in order to be a strong partner of the international community in which we will be able to make a clear demands. Let's say what we want from the international community, because this political unity will represent the will of the people. And then the international players will not be able to, in a certain way, play their own divide and exploit a game with the Myanmar. We have a lot of predators around Myanmar which are also playing this divide and exploit game.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.